UFC Fight Night Figueiredo versus Benavidez 2 Fight Island takes place this weekend, and I am really looking forward to this card, but we're going to be going through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. And before we even get into our predictions, let me just say this. Round of applause to the UFC, because this is actually somewhat of a decent card. A main event title fight, which is never bad in my opinion. Also a stacked load of prelims with fun matchups throughout. Let's start with the predictions though. This card is just amazing. Let's get straight into it. Early prelim opener of Felipe versus Sergei Spivak, taking place at heavyweight to kick us off. I feel like they love giving us heavyweight fights to kick off the cards nowadays, because they it's more of a chance there's going to be a big knockout to give the night a great start. But Sergei Spivak versus Felipe is a great matchup. Felipe, an undefeated up-and-comer, 25 years of age, joining the UFC. Not the biggest heavyweight in the world, I will tell you that. 6 foot tall, 75-inch reach. Sergei Spivak's going to be the much bigger guy in there. I feel as though Spivak's going to get the job done, not just because he's a bigger guy, but he's got better experience. Felipe has fought some decent opponents, but, I mean, Spivak's been in there with guys like Taito Ivasa, and most recently his fight against Marcin Tybura as well, which was actually quite competitive. Tybura managed to get the better of him, but come on. Tybura was getting the better of Derek Lewis in some moments of their fight. I mean, Tybura is no slouch. Sergei Spivak has been in there with some tough customers, including Walt Harris as well. I know he lost that matchup, but he bounced back. I feel as though Spivak's going to get the job done. I just haven't seen Felipe in there with anyone the same level that Spivak's been in there against. And I rate the losses of Spivak more than I do the wins of Felipe in some ways. Plus, it's not as if Felipe's this young, hungry up-and-comer and they've just fed him Sergei Spivak. Sergei Spivak's 25 years of age. A big guy at heavyweight as well, 6'2.5" or something, with a 78-inch reach. Not the longest reach in the world, I'll be honest. There are some lightweights with longer reaches, but still. Great fight. I'm looking forward to it. I feel as though Sergei Spivak gets it done just by being the bigger guy, the more experienced guy, and a little bit better on the feet as well. And he's got the grappling to fall back on. I feel like he beats Felipe. Moving on. Davi Ramos versus Armand Tsarukyan. Second on the early prelims. This card is actually pretty decent. Ramos versus Tsarukyan. I feel as though Tsarukyan's going to get the job done. I've been singing the praises of Armand Tsarukyan before he even joined the UFC. I actually predicted him to beat Islam Makhachev. And I'll be honest with you guys, I was kind of fucking close. I was really, really close for him beating Islam Makhachev. That was a really close fight. If one takedown would have gone the other way in Armand Tsarukyan's favour, we could have been looking at a win for him. That was a real close fight. 2 of those rounds were razor close, and if Armand Tsarukyan made a change here or there, maybe he would have got the upset like I predicted, but he's still only 23 years of age. I feel as though watching the fights with Islam Makhachev, Tsarukyan is very good on the feet. He's very good on the feet. And Davi Ramos wasn't able to implement his game plan against Islam Makhachev, but he can do it against so many other guys in the division. But Tsarukyan, in my opinion, has the level of jiu-jitsu and grappling to avoid the submissions of Davi Ramos. I mean, Davi Ramos has not submitted every single fighter he's been in there against, including a man named Austin Hubbard. I feel as though if Austin Hubbard can avoid the submissions, at least lose to a decision against you, I just feel as though Armand Tsarukyan's probably going to be able to do the same thing. I mean, these are good fighters. I feel as though Armand Tsarukyan's a bit better than Davi Ramos. Davi Ramos is a dangerous man, but I just feel as though on the feet, Armand Tsarukyan's going to have a bit of an advantage. He has a natural size advantage as well, and a reach advantage if that doesn't help him enough. Whilst being the taller guy, he's got more experience, even though he's younger. Too many things, in my opinion, are in favour of Armand Tsarukyan. I'm going to be picking him to win this fight by decision. 30-27, he wins every single round, avoids the submissions, but manages to pull off his striking game and implement it all over Davi Ramos' face. Moving on to Malcolm Gordon versus Amir Albazi. Malcolm X Gordon is his middle name. That's actually pretty good. I like that. That's a cool little nickname. I feel as though Amir Albazi's going to get the job done. Has a little bit of a better record. Has a little bit of a better youth to him. 26 years of age. I mean, this guy's pretty good. I'll be honest with you. He's very, very good. 12-1. Fighting out of Sweden, even though he's definitely not Swedish. He's definitely not Swedish, although he's fighting out of Sweden, so I'll let him pass. He's beaten some decent guys over at Brave FC or CF, Championship Fighting. I have no idea why they don't just switch those two initials around, but he's beaten some decent guys. I feel like he's going to get the jump. Actually, fuck off. What am I talking about? Malcolm X Gordon is actually a decent fighter. Just fought great fighters. I just remember this. Yeah, TKO 47. He beat Yoni Sherbatov, who was 8-1 at the time. He's beaten some decent guys outside the UFC, and he's more experienced. What the fuck am I talking about? Of course, Malcolm X Gordon's going to get the job done. I think he gets it done over Amir Albazi getting a TKO finish. Moving on, Bret Johns versus Montel Jackson. I'm looking forward to this one. This is a great fight on the prelims. In fact, this one could even be on the main card and I wouldn't even be too mad at it. Bret Johns versus Montel Jackson is a great matchup. I feel as though Montel Jackson's going to get the job done. Bret Johns had a little bit of trouble in his comeback fight. I feel like he should have had a little bit of a better time with Tony Gravely. I mean, I like Tony Gravely. He's got a decent record and he's fought some good guys. But come on, Bret Johns. That wasn't the guy I saw narrowly lose to... I mean, he lost to Pedro Munoz and Aljamain Sterling. At least he went to a decision with those guys and didn't get completely crushed. I mean, Pedro Munoz did kind of beat... I think Montel Jackson's going to win this fight, guys. I really do. I think Montel Jackson has a clear stand-up advantage. He has a ridiculous reach advantage of 4.5 inches. I mean, Montel Jackson has more of a reach than Carlos Felipe at heavyweight, the guy I was just talking about not too long ago. Montel Jackson's reach in this division is crazy. His hands are massive for the division. He has good power as well, even though he wasn't able to finish Felipe Colares in his last fight. I mean, if you watch that fight again, that fight could have been finished a couple of times. Like, if... I don't even know, like, some of the stoppages in UFC, sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short. A different ref could have stopped that fight between Montel Jackson and Felipe Colares, because it wasn't the first time that Montel Jackson was beating up Felipe Colares in that fight where it could have been stopped. He went after him multiple times that it could have been stopped in that fight. I feel as though the referee actually should have maybe jumped in at one point, because Colares' chin was just ridiculous, somehow absorbing those punches from Jackson. But Jackson showed, even whilst winging those big bombs, that he at least still has, even whilst emptying the gas tank against someone trying to get the finish, he still went 3 rounds and secured himself a unanimous decision win, which actually I prefer than a quick KO, because he showed that he can use a whole bunch of energy in a quick burst trying to finish someone multiple times throughout a fight and still have the cardio to go 3 rounds. And normally with a guy like Montel Jackson, who's a lot of fast twitch muscle fiber and power, it's good to see that out of someone. So I think Montel Jackson's going to get the job done. Bret Johns had a bit of trouble with Tony Gravely. You could put that up to the fact that he was off for a long time before then. I'm just not willing to add that as a factor. I think Montel Jackson can avoid the submissions, can avoid the grappling. He's got really good wrist control. He's got massive hands. As I said before, he's got great wrist control. It's hard to break that against him. I've seen him wrestle with guys like Brian Kelleher, who's a decent grappler in the division, completely shut him down and got himself a Dash choke after rocking him in the first place as well. Montel Jackson's just a dangerous guy. I think he's going to get the job done against Bret Johns. Moving on, Joe Duffy versus Joel Alvarez. I like Joel Alvarez here. Younger guy, 16-2, great record, fought very good guys as well. His only loss, other than his original one earlier on in his career, his second loss and only loss inside the UFC was against Antigulov, if I remember correctly. Let me just look that one up real quick. I think it was Damir Ismagulov. Hang on. Ismagulov. There's so many ofs in the fucking UFC right now, it's hard to keep track of them. Damir Ismagulov, that's the guy. I knew I was right. I corrected myself just in time. We're good. 17-1, Damir Ismagulov. Last came off a win against Thiago Moises, who just ripped the leg off of Michael Johnson. Like, I don't blame you for losing to Damir Ismagulov. He's been undefeated for a very long time. I think he's on something like a 14-fight win streak right now, just tearing through absolutely everyone, undefeated in the UFC. He doesn't fight too often, but Damir Ismagulov is an absolute savage. And I don't blame him for losing to that guy. Not to mention he's beaten good guys as well. Radu Maxim, now I'm looking at his record. I'll read you some 9-1 guy. Danielo Beluardo in the UFC, 12-3 at the time. And I look at Joe Duffy, and I just feel as though maybe the passion for fighting is gone. You aren't hungry if you're fighting once a year. In my opinion, that's just a real clear sign to me. If you're fighting once a year, you just aren't... You aren't losing a fight and immediately being, right, I'm getting right back in the gym and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to get back and I'm going to get better and I'm going to eradicate this loss. It seems as though he's taken too much time off within his bouts, and I don't like it, man. He took a fight against Mark Jacasey in his last bout, had a real troubling time, had his calves just smashed to bits. I actually picked him to beat Mark Jacasey, but Mark Jacasey got the job done against him. Now we know how much of a savage Mark Jacasey is. Went on to beat Lando Venata after that performance as well. Lost to James Vick by TKO. Got beat up by Dustin Poirier. He's taken a lot of damage in his career, and I feel as though I'm finally about to bet against Joe Duffy, and I think the father of time and the hunger maybe isn't there as much. He's the shorter guy by quite a bit. Joel Alvarez is 6'2", rangy, 77-inch reach compared to the 73 of Duffy. He's a tricky fighter. He's got good footwork. I feel as though he can keep himself on the outside against Duffy. He's got good jiu-jitsu as well. He will avoid submissions against Duffy. I think he'll be able to grapple with him. I just think that Joel Alvarez is going to be the young up-and-comer that just ends Joe Duffy's career, in my opinion. And I think this might be the retirement of Joe Duffy. I hope it's not. I'm a fan of Joe Duffy. He's a great fighter. He puts on entertaining bouts. But Joel Alvarez, I think, is going to be the guy to topple him and maybe end his career. Joel Alvarez gets the job done. Joe Duffy's tough. I'll say by unanimous decision. 30-27. Joel Alvarez wins every single round. Moving on. Grant Dawson versus Nad Narimani. Nad Narimani is a very good fighter. Underrated. Underrated fighter out of the UK. Very good. Grant Dawson, on the other hand, is just one of the dark horses of the division right now, coming off a big win against Darek Minner. Wasn't the original opponent, but still went out there and looked dominant and looked great. Nad Narimani, coming off a KO loss to Mike Grundy. It was a little bit of an early stoppage, to be fair. I thought it could have gone on a little bit longer, and Nad Narimani was doing quite well in that fight as well, but I just feel as though Nad Narimani's going to lose. Grant Dawson is huge, man, and he's great at grappling, and Nad Narimani has not fought that level of grappler yet. He's fought some decent guys, don't get me wrong. Khalid Taha, who was 12-1 at the time, beat him by decision, beat Paddy Pimblett as well. The legend, the GOAT, Paddy Pimblett, went to a decision with him. I just feel as though he hasn't fought the level of grappler of Grant Dawson. He's just Grant Dawson. I feel like he's going to be one of these guys that makes it towards the rankings. I feel that way about Bryce Mitchell as well. And Sadiq Yusuf right now. I think Sadiq Yusuf's going to win his next fight if they do make it. And it will be against a ranked opponent, I'm sure. Grant Dawson is one of those guys as well, in my opinion. Huge guy for the weight class. Is taking place at catch weight, which only favours him. Because the only downside of being a bigger guy is having to have that massive weight cut. And now he's just going to be the bigger guy without having so bad of a weight cut. He's naturally bigger than Narimani, and they're taking it at a catch weight. I feel as though Grant Dawson's going to get the job done. It's dangerous on the feet with Narimani for him, because Grant Dawson's a little bit green on the feet, but Grant Dawson gets it done by decision. Moving on, Roman Dolidze versus Kadis Ibragimov. I think Kadis Ibragimov wins. I had some people talking to me about Roman Dolidze not too long ago in one of my live streams, my daily live streams that I do. It was very interesting. They were talking to me about him. I was like, okay, I'm going to take some look into this guy. And I was like, hang on a second. Popped by USADA in his UFC debut a year ago. Had to be pulled out of the fight. Actually tested positive for some gnarly stuff as well. It wasn't just like an immediate confirmed tainted supplement as far as I'm aware. Popped for some big stuff where, you know, for a supplement to be laced with that many different things is a little bit unlikely. But that's what they went with. An older guy as well. Kadis Ibragimov is still 25 years of age. He's the bigger guy in there with the reach advantage, with more experience as well. And Roman Dolidze has fought some decent guys, not too many great guys. Kadis Ibragimov's been in there with a veteran like Ed Herman, went blow for him, lost that fight, which is a bit of a bad mark. But Ed Herman is still out here doing a damn thing. Like, I don't really rate that loss too badly. Kadis Ibragimov, I think, is going to come in with the experience as the younger guy, be the bigger guy as well out there. Maybe not the stronger guy, but I think he's going to have a fun time striking with Roman Dolidze, who's coming off a long layoff. I think he hasn't fought since 2018, I believe. And a USADA break. I'm going to bet on Kadis Ibragimov. He's a juicy underdog. That's my underdog of the card right there. Kadis Ibragimov gets the job done against Roman Dolidze. Moving on. Alejandro Pantoja versus Askar Askarov, the main card. Alejandro Pantoja's going to win this bout. I'm looking forward to it. It's a good matchup, really. It was kind of the one that was supposed to happen. I wish they would have maybe done Alejandro Pantoja versus Brandon Moreno too. I think that would make a little bit more sense to be on this card to fill in for the title fight. But they're giving it to Askar Askarov, who went to a draw with Brandon Moreno, which, you know, I don't think that was a draw. I thought that was a clear 2-1 win for Brandon Moreno, in my opinion. But they saw it as a draw, so they gave it a draw. You know, we can't really rely on the judges too much nowadays. But still, Askarov, good fighter. I just feel as though he lost to Brandon Moreno. A win over Tim Elliott over all 3 rounds isn't as impressive to me anymore as it maybe once would have been. I mean, Tim Elliott seems to be losing to everyone right now. I just watched Brandon Royval, a part-time fighter with a full-time job on the side, go out there and submit Tim Elliott, and I watched Askar Askarov go 3 rounds with him, while Tim Elliott literally intentionally fucking walked into punches. I like Askar Askarov. He's beaten some decent guys, but Alejandro Pantoja, even in some of his losses, I mean, he's lost to some of the best in the division, but one of his losses was Deiveson Figueiredo. He looked quite good in that fight. I mean, Figueiredo had the power advantage for sure, But Pantoja came back with power. He KO'd Wilson Hayes. In his most recent fight, I believe he KO'd Matt Schnell in the first round as well. He's got crack. He's got the power at flyweight. I like power at flyweight. I think he definitely has the power advantage over Askarov. And the speed advantage as well, I would say. Askarov's a bit more of a volume grinder. He takes guys down. He beats them up. He submits a lot of guys as well. Alejandro Pantoja's jiu-jitsu is no fucking joke. I mean, Figueredo wanted none of the jiu-jitsu of Pantoja. Pantoja's dangerous. I think he's going to get the job done against Askar Askarov. In fact, I could see him cracking Askar Askarov, Askarov going for a sloppy takedown, and Pantoja whipping up a guillotine or a submission. I think he gets it done. Alejandro Pantoja, I'm betting on him by submission in the second round after a good time striking in the first. Alejandro Pantoja wins. Ariane Lipski versus Luana Carolina. Why is it on the main card? Because she's fuckable, of course. That's why it's on the main card. Lipski's a good fighter. She's got the experience. I think I'm going to pick her here. There's not really much to go off of. Luana Carolina is actually a decent fighter. A good fight along, reach for the women's flyweight division. I feel as though Ariane Lipski's going to get the job done. Even with some of her losses, she's got experience. Experience seems to be a good factor in a lot of female fights recently, as far as I'm aware. 6-1, Luana Carolina has fought some decent opponents, but hasn't fought the level of opponents that Ariane Lipski has fought. I'm going to be going with Lipski. She gets the job done, narrowly outstriking Luana Carolina in the 3 rounds. For a decision, 30-27, Ariane Lipski. Moving on. Jesus Christ, almost fell asleep. Mark Diakiese versus Rafael Fiziev. Interesting. Very interesting. I'm going to be going with Mark Diakiese here, guys. I like Rafael Fiziev. He's a very good fighter, but, I mean, I remember when there was a lot of hype behind Rafael Fiziev not too long ago before he got KO'd by a spinning back kick to the face from Magomed Ankalaev. No. What Dagestani is it now? I'm mixing up all their fucking names. Magomed Mustafayev. Another Magomed. Sorry. Fucking hell. It's so difficult. Magomed... What one was it again? Fucking... Magomed Mustafayev. Spinning back fist to the face. Spinning back kick to the face. Now I'm mixing up techniques. These Dagestanis, man. I swear to God. Magomed Mustafayev. Spinning back kick to the face against Rafael Fiziev. Got destroyed by him. It's okay. It was a spinning back kick to the face. It happens to some guys. You know, you can't really prepare all too much for that kind of technique to happen in a fight. It happens. You get spinning back kicked in the face now and again. That's okay. But Rafael Fiziev, in my opinion, wasn't very good before then. The best guy he's fought, his record was 7-3, I believe. Other than that, he fought a guy who was 5-3. Hasn't fought anyone other than that. Has a good level of kickboxing, but Mark Diakiese. What the fuck am I doing? Mark Diakiese. These names. What the fuck? Mark Diakiese is a very good fighter. Had great opponents over his last few fights, fought the likes of Dan Hooker, beat Joe Duffy, beat Lando Venata. These are good guys in the UFC that Mark Diakiese's getting wins over. Dan Hooker he lost to, but still was looking very competitive in that fight as well, and even in the other fights that he lost. Mark Diakiese never really gets blown out of the water. He's always somewhat competitive in fights. Went to a close fight with Nasrat Haqparast, went to a close fight with Drakkar Klose as well. I mean, you could argue Diakiese kind of beat Drakkar Klose as far as I remember. That was a very close fight, if you'll pardon the pun, Drakkar. But even still, Mark Diakiese's a savage. I think the calf kicks are going to play a huge factor here. I think Mark Diakiese's going to waste no time getting straight to him in the first round, chopping up the legs of Rafael Fiziev, changing the fight from then on out. Fiziev's going to be a one-legged opponent, and Mark Diakiese's going to get himself a unanimous decision. When Mark Diakiese came into the UFC, he was a KO artist, the bone crusher, went crazy in the first round, looked for the KO punch. He seems to have learned his lesson against guys who can take that power, like Dan Hooker, tough guys. And he seems to have become a little bit more patient, I've noticed. So I'm actually looking forward to this one. He's got the reach advantage as well. If it wasn't all enough for him to have the favours that he does, give him the reach as well by 1.5 inches. I feel like Mark Diakiese gets it done, ruins the legs and cruises to a decision. 30-27, Mark Diakiese. Moving on, Jack Hermansson versus Kelvin Gastelum. I'll be doing a full breakdown for this fight. I really am looking forward to it. Jack Hermansson versus Kelvin Gastelum is a good scrap. Really good scrap. I think Hermansson beats him. He's not the favourite. What are they doing here? Sorry, I normally I don't bet completely based on odds, but Kelvin Gastelum's the favourite here. Name me a fighter in their prime that Kelvin Gastelum has beaten. Name me any one of them. And I have always said this about Kelvin Gastelum. Although I picked him to beat Israel Adesanya by a lunging left hook, by the way. I was pretty close if he didn't shoot for a takedown right afterwards like a retard. But still, fighters in their prime beat Kelvin Gastelum. if you look at his resume, and I've said this so many times on this channel, I think people are starting to think I'm a broken record here. I don't want to sound like one, but Jacare Souza by split decision. Is he the same Jacare there once was? Michael Bisping on a week's notice after getting dropped and choked out cold by GSP. I don't really know how much I feel about that. Plus, it was an older Michael Bisping that retired the fucking day after. Beat Vitor Belfort. 2017 Vitor Belfort. Like, okay, well, you know, you fought Chris Weidman, who was still somewhat in his prime back then. Only coming off a loss to Yoel Romero, I believe, at the time. Bounced back against Kelvin Gastelum. I feel like Jack Hermansson, in my opinion, is a Weidman with a better chin right now, and maybe somewhat better striking, because when you look at the Weidman-Jacare fight, Jacare was having a lot of success there. I mean, Weidman was probably ahead a little bit, but Jack Hermansson versus Jacare Souza wasn't really close. I think I had Hermansson 4 rounds to 1. I picked Hermansson to win that fight, by the way, on short notice, as a huge underdog. I believe in Hermansson in this division, even though he lost to Jared Cannonier. He was doing good against Jared Cannonier. He had him down, he had his back at one point as well, he wasn't getting outstruck or anything on the feet. Jared Cannonier timed a perfect uppercut as Hermansson went for a takedown. Understandable, you got TKO'd. I feel as though he's going to beat Kelvin Gastelum though, man. Kelvin Gastelum's record, Nate Marquardt, Johnny Hendricks, Tim Kennedy. In their prime? In their prime? Neil Magny, 2015, somewhat in his prime. Beats Kelvin Gastelum. Tyron Woodley, 2015, in his prime. Beats Kelvin Gastelum. I just feel as though he's going to lose again. Jack Hermansson's in his prime right now, hungry to bounce back, and he knows if he wins this one, and another one, he's one fight away from a title shot. Jack Hermansson gets it done by submission in the first round. Armand guillotine, and it's easy. I believe it's actually easy. I could eat my words here, but Jack Hermansson's got a huge reach advantage on the feet. Kelvin Gastelum has trouble with guys that have the reach advantage with him, even though he does do well and he has a reach disadvantage against nearly everyone. Jack Hermansson stays at range somewhat well, has good striking, has a good chin, has taken a lot of time off since his TKO loss. I think he goes out there, grabs Kelvin Gastelum and takes him for a spin like he did David Branch and submits him in the first round. Jack Hermansson gets the arm and guillotine round 1. Dawson Figueredo versus Joseph Benavidez. Looking forward to this matchup a lot. I think Figueredo wins. I picked Benavidez the first time. I was one of those guys. I saw Figueredo's performance against Jussier Formiga and thought, you know what? I've seen Benavidez out-grapple Formiga. Formiga out-grappled Figueredo. I feel as though Benavidez is going to go out there and out-grapple him. I was one of those guys. I thought Figueredo was going to lose. Little did I know that he had a terrible injury in that Formiga fight. I think he tore his labrum or something. Someone look up what injury he had, because I hear the commentary talking about it over Dawson Figueredo's fights, talking about the injury he had against Formiga, but they never said what it was. It looked like he had a bad shoulder because he wasn't really throwing his right hand as much. But still, Figueredo get the job done in the first fight. We have to take into consideration what we learned in the first fight. I picked Benavidez to win the first fight. I thought he would win. I thought he really was going to get it done. I thought Dawson Figueredo's gas tank isn't the best in the world. Benavidez might take this to the 4th round and TKO Figueredo there. That's what my prediction was. I think that was a justified prediction at the time. What happened in the first fight? Figueredo got a takedown. Benavidez got what he wanted, which was Figueredo in grappling range. Figueredo almost submitted him in the first round multiple times. Like, it wasn't like for my prediction of Benavidez being able to out-grapple Figueredo and TKO him later on after he's gassed him out a bit with the grappling. I was like, oh my god, Figueredo took him down. This is over. This is what Benavidez wants. And he proved me dead wrong. He has better grappling than Benavidez. Benavidez backed away from the grappling in that first fight because he almost got submitted. His arm was contorted in some crazy way, but he survived it. He got back up. Benavidez's striking in that fight was not what I expected it to be. He was winging a little bit emotional. He was coming with his head first multiple times. I mean, you've heard this all before about Benavidez's performance. Not to mention now, against a guy, I mean, Benavidez was already a guy coming off a TKO loss way earlier in his career against Demetrius Johnson, but still, he had those TKO losses. He got dropped by Sergio Pettis. He's been a guy at flyweight that doesn't seem to have an iron chin. And I think at flyweight, having a really, really good chin is very important, because with the speed these guys throw at, if you can't take the punishment anymore, especially against a guy like Figueredo, who has bantamweight power, in my opinion, and is a bantamweight, let's be real, he's a huge guy for the division. I think Figueredo's going to be champ. He gets it done. He's the champ right now, in my opinion, even though he missed weight. I mean, that performance was just as it... I mean, they blamed the headbutt for the reason why Benavidez lost, but he instigated the headbutt, and not to mention Figueredo shot a massive hook to the body just before that as well that sort of hunched Benavidez over. I just feel as though coming off another TKO loss, an extra one to Figueredo in brutal fashion, just that chin's going to be a tiny bit weaker, not to mention the way he's been talking recently. Sounds like he's a little bit of a fucking CTE. 35 years of age now, been around for the longest time. That's like an Aldo level career, but he's 35. Benavidez has been around for a while. I think Figueredo cracks him end of the first, TKOs him in the first round. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye. What a great card. Jesus.